How's it going, y'all? Welcome to this three-part series on how to play the Pokemon TCG. In this video, we're going to be talking about the basics of gameplay and how to basically get started. Now, the other two videos, deck building and then advanced situations, will be in the description below, so be sure to check those out. And if you like this kind of content, be sure to subscribe. I'd love to have you along for the ride. But without further ado, let's get started. Pokemon requires a 60-card deck. Now, within this deck, you can have any combination of Pokemon, supporters, energies, which we go into in the deck building phase. But one important rule is you can only have 4 of the same card. So before we get into the gameplay, let's talk about the different sections of the boards. And ideally, you'll want a what's called playmat, which is essentially a background for you to lay your cards on, so you're not just putting your cards on the bare table. Now, the first spot on your board will be the top center. This is your active spot. This is your attacking and defending Pokemon. And just below that will be your bench, which is where Pokemon can be in play but not active. Now, the bench can only have up to 5 basic Pokemon at a time. For space, we're just going to have 3 on here. There are certain stadiums that do allow for more Pokemon to be on your bench, but for simplicity's sake, let's just keep it to a max of 5. Now, your opponent will have the same setup, just mirrored across from you. A stadium can be played, and the stadium, only one stadium can be played at a time. So this will be played in between yours and your opponent's setups, and only one stadium can be played at a time. The stadium does affect both players, and both players can benefit from it. On the right-hand side is your deck. This will be face down, and right below that will be your discard pile. So your discard pile is face up, and it is public. So you or your opponent can flip through your discard to see what cards are in it. Now, on your left-hand side will be 6 what's called prize cards. These are basically the crown jewels of the card game. These determine who wins or loses the card game, and these will be face down, and you will have 6 of them. So now let's get into setting up your board for the first time. So what you want to do is shuffle your deck. I like to split the deck in half and kind of feed the cards between themselves, and just do this quite a few times until the deck is properly shuffled. If you have good sleeves, these should glide right in, but for cheaper sleeves, they may stick a little bit, so just shuffle your cards in any way you can. Make sure they're shuffled really well. Now we are going to take the top 7 cards, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and this is our hand. So let's check out what our hand looks like. So we do have a basic Pokemon. That is what we are looking for, and we will play our basic Pokemon. If we only have one basic in play, or one basic Pokemon in our hand, we will put that face down in the active spot. If we had more than one, we would have the option to put them face down on the bench, but only basic Pokemon. If you're curious, basic Pokemon all say basic in the top left-hand corner. If they are evolutions, they will say either stage 1 or stage 2. You cannot play a stage 1 or stage 2 directly onto your bench. They have to be evolved. So you can only play a basic face down on your bench. So let's put the deck on the right hand side in the deck section and take a look at our hand. So there's different cards in the Pokemon TCG. There are Pokemon, there are energies, which look like this, basic energies. These power your attacks and allow you to retreat. Also, there are trainer cards. Trainers, they say trainer in the top right-hand side, and they're broken into different categories. Items, stadiums, supporters, and tools. It doesn't look like I pulled any tools. Supporters, you can only play 1 per turn. Items, you can play as many times as you want in the turn, or you can play as many items as you want, but you can only play them, like, I can only play this card once, but I can play this and this. And then stadiums go between you and your opponent. If there's already a stadium in play, that stadium gets discarded and the new one is active. You can only play 1 stadium per turn, and you can only have 1 stadium active. Tools, even though I don't have this here, attach to your Pokemon, and you can only attach 1 tool per Pokemon. We'll get into that later. But we have our hand here. Let's make sure we don't show our opponent. After you have played your active Pokemon face down, we will grab the top 6 cards and place them without looking at them on the right hand side and these are our prize cards. Now, let's say you draw your 7 cards and you don't get any basic Pokemon. That is called a mulligan, and what you will do is shuffle your hand and put it back into the deck, and then draw 7 more cards. Every time you repeat that cycle, your opponent gets to draw 1 card. And so for 1 mulligan, after the opponent's board is set up, they get to draw an additional card. If you get 2 mulligans, they can draw 2 cards. However, you only draw your mulligan cards after your board and your opponent's is fully set up. So you do that last. After you and your opponent are both set up, you will roll a dice to determine who goes first. Or flip a coin. So you call heads or tails, and whoever wins the coin toss gets to choose whether they want to go first or not. Now, the person who goes first is technically considered turn 0, and the only difference is you cannot play a supporter and you cannot attack. So unless your deck specifically has a strategy where you go first, ideally you'll want to go second, so you can use a supporter and you can attack. Once you and your opponent are ready, the coin is flipped, you determine who goes first. You will both flip your Pokemon over. So flip your active and any bench you have in play. So let's say I go first. I am turn 0. I can do everything except play a supporter and attack. At the start of your turn, you will draw a card. It is very important that you always remember to draw a card first. In most competitive situations, if you forget to draw a card, your opponent automatically takes 2 prizes. So it is very important to remember that you always draw a card. When I first started, I would always forget that so often. Now, before we get into this, let's look at our active Pokemon. So our active Pokemon is Munkidori. It has a move Mind Bend, where your opponent's active Pokemon is now confused and it deals 60 damage. However, in order to use it, we have to have a Psychic Energy, and this is called a colorless energy. So any energy applies as colorless. So I need 2 energies attached to this in order to attack. So I can't attack this turn. But I could have the possibility of using an ability. Some Pokemon have abilities which you can use during your turn. This one is Adrenabrain, which if I have a dark energy attached, I can move 3 damage counters from any Pokemon to an opponent's Pokemon. So that in this situation, I cannot do that. But keep in mind, abilities can be used at any time during your turn. Just make sure you do exactly what they say. Now, for energies, to load up your attacks, you can only attach 1 energy per turn. So I'm going to attach this energy to Munkidori for this turn. If I had 2 energies, I could not attach both. You can only do 1. I am going to play Stadium Artisan. And so since this is a stadium, I'm going to play it between me and my opponent. And I can do whatever it says. So Artisan, I can search my deck for a basic Pokemon that does not have a rule box. So no EX or anything like that. So I will grab my deck and I will flip through until I find the Pokemon that I want. I am going to grab, let's see here. I have to grab a basic. So I'm going to grab this Screamtail basic and put it in, well, the stadium says I need to put it on the bench. So I will put it on the bench. Now notice I just flipped through this deck. If I draw randomly, I will need to shuffle this again. Since I may go back in before drawing randomly, I am going to lay it sideways, signifying that it needs to be shuffled before I draw. Now, for items, again, you can use as many items as you want during your turn. So I am going to play this Earthen Vessel, which allows me to discard another card and find 2 basic energies from my deck. Now, the reason I haven't shuffled yet is because I knew I was going to go back in. So I'm going to search through here. I'm going to find 1 energy, 2 energies, and put these in my hand. Since I played this item, it is now used up, and I will put it in the discard pile face up. Now remember, I already played a Psychic Energy, so I can't attach another one this turn. I'm going to save these items for next turn, and I will be done with my turn. So before I'm done, I will shuffle my deck and get it ready for the next turn. Okay, so that was turn 0. I could not attack and I could not use a supporter. Let's say my opponent finishes their turn, and then now it's my turn again. Now I have full reins to do whatever I want in this turn. So I am going to start, very importantly, remember, draw a card. I got a Monkey Dory. Since it's basic, I can play it on my bench. If it was stage 1 or stage 2, I could not play it. I have to evolve it. Let's see, I'm going to attach an energy for turn onto Monkey Dory. This Monkey Dory now has 2 energies on it, so I can use this attack. But I don't want to do that because that ends my turn once I attack. I am going to use a Buddy Buddy Poffin, which allows me to search my deck for 2 basic Pokemon with 70 HP or less. So I'm going to grab a Ralts and a Team Rocket's Mimikyu. Now I may go back in, so I'm going to lay it sideways to signify it hasn't been shuffled. And I'm going to put my item in the discard pile. Next, I will use an Ultra Ball, which allows me to discard 2 cards and find any Pokemon in my deck. So I'm going to look for the Gardevoir. No, I'm going to look for the Kirlia. And then I will shuffle because I'm not going to go back in my deck. So I'll discard the Ultra Ball and I will put the Kirlia in my hand. Now Kirlia evolves from Ralts. However, I played Ralts this turn, so I cannot evolve my Ralts yet. You have to have your Pokemon active for at least 1 turn before you can evolve. And I cannot evolve from Kirlia into Gardevoir in the same turn. It has to be separate turns. So I will now, since I have full energies on my Monkey Dory, I can now attack for 60 damage, and my opponent is now confused. Now, confusion and states are a more advanced thing, so I will cover that in the 3rd video for this series. I did 60 damage with Mind Bend. So, let's say my opponent has this Mimikyu as their active Pokemon. Now, Mimikyu only has 60 damage, and so this attack will knock out my Mimikyu. If it didn't knock it out, you would just put damage counters, so I'd put 6 damage counters onto my Pokemon to keep track of how much damage is on my Pokemon. But since it was knocked out with 60 damage, your opponent will discard that Pokemon, and since you KO'd another Pokemon, you get to take a prize card. So I grabbed a Night Stretcher, and now it's in my hand. The goal of the game is to wipe out your opponent's Pokemon and reclaim your 6 prize cards. As soon as you have reclaimed your prize cards, you win the game. Now there are Pokemon such as Gardevoir, or like this EX Gardevoir. Let me pull it up so I'll do this. So EX Pokemon have a rule box, and the rule box says if this Pokemon is knocked out, your opponent takes 2 prize cards. And so if you knock out your opponent's EX Pokemon, you get to take 2 prizes. And after I attacked, that ends my turn, it goes to my opponent. So let's fast forward, my opponent does their turn. Let's say they do 30 damage to my active Pokemon. I will put 3 damage counters on, or a dice that says 3, onto my Pokemon. And now it's my turn again. Remember, at the start of your turn, you draw a card. Perfect. Dark Energy. I will play an energy onto my bench. Pokemon Monkey Dory. And since Ralts, if you can see it, there's a glare, that's a Monkey Dory. Since Ralts was played last turn, I can actually evolve, so I will just place this Kirlia on top of Ralts. And now my Kirlia is the Pokemon, not Ralts. Now, remember supporters, you can only use 1 supporter per turn, so I'm going to use this Iono, and what this is just shuffle your hand into the bottom of your deck and draw for how many prize cards you have. So I'll do 5. Discard the Iono, and this is my new hand. Oh, perfect. It has a tool. So, tools, you can play as many tools as you want during a turn, but you can only play 1 tool onto a Pokemon at a time. So, let's say I want to play this Pokemon tool onto my active Pokemon. Make sure you read what that tool does and do accordingly, but I can only have 1 on my Pokemon at a time. Let's see, I want to add a second tool to my Screamtail, Bravery Charm, and that tool actually adds more health to my Screamtail. So tools can be incredibly effective for buffing up your setup. Now, once you add a tool, you cannot take it off unless you have an item that says you can or the Pokemon is knocked out. If my Monkey Dory is in the active and it's knocked out, all cards attached go to the discard pile. But let's talk about abilities. You can use abilities during your turn as many times as you want, as long as the ability doesn't say you can only use it once. So, Adrenabrain. Let's talk about my active Pokemon's ability. Once during your turn, if this Pokemon has a dark energy attached, which it does, I can move 3 damage counters from one of your Pokemon to your opponent's Pokemon. So I do have 3 damage counters on this Pokemon, and so I will use its ability to move it to my opponent's Pokemon. Now, once I use this ability, I'll either like cockeye it or put a marker on here, like a coin saying I've used this ability and I can't use that one again this turn. However, I do have a second Monkey Dory in play, which has the same ability. Since this one hasn't used its ability yet, I can use this one just like I used that one. So there's no limit to the amount of Pokemon abilities you can use, but some abilities you can only use once per Pokemon per turn. Remember, since there is a stadium of play, you can enact that stadium and use it, so I can search my deck for a basic Pokemon. You can use that as long as the stadium is active. Remember, your opponent can as well. So let's talk about retreating. So at the very bottom of each card, it says retreat with the amount of energies it costs to retreat. So for Monkey Dory to retreat, it costs 1 colorless. And so what that means is I will pay the price of 1 energy. Colorless means any color energy. Discard it, and I will move this Monkey Dory to the bench. Now, when you do this, you have to move another one up to the active, so I'm going to move this Curlia up to the active. You can only retreat once per turn, and so I would not be able to retreat back Curlia until next turn. Or if you have an item that says you can switch them. Some items allow free retreat cost, some Pokemon have a free retreat cost, and then there's some tools and abilities that allow for free retreat cost. So you can strategically use those certain items to get your Pokemon moving back and forth without wasting energies. So let's skip ahead and say I only have 1 prize card left, and my Curlia has energies enough to do 30 damage. If my opponent only has 30 health left, and I attack, then I take my final prize card. Taking your final prize card wins the game. There's also some other ways to win the game, or lose the game, should I say. So let's say you draw the last card in your deck, and then you attack, they do their turn, and then it comes back to you. If a turn starts and you don't have any cards in your deck, you lose the game automatically. Another way to lose is, let's say you only have an active Pokemon and no Pokemon on your bench, and your opponent does enough damage to knock out your active Pokemon. If you have no more Pokemon in play, no matter how many prize cards your opponent has, they win the game. You have to have at least a few Pokemon in play at all times. Even if you have one in your hand, it's no good. You have to have some on the board. And finally, if you just, let's say it's looking hopeless and you're like, oh man, I can't win this, you can concede, and that ends the game and your opponent wins, and vice versa. Now, that's certainly a straightforward view of the TCG, and there's definitely strategy depending on your deck. You can have certain items to do special things, or if you use a rare candy to evolve into a stage 2. So it's a very complex game with a very simple base mechanic. So this should get you started, and then as you play a few rounds with your deck, you can kind of see what cards you need, what cards you don't need, and adjust from there. So be sure to check out the other videos for deck building and advanced situations in the TCG in the description below if they are filmed to this point. But for this video, I hope it helped you get started, and good luck, have fun. It's a lot of fun playing the game, so I wish you the best.